think it's the last part of the question, which is, and is there anything my wife can do to help her find her way through this and sort of reconcile this idea that he must have hated her and had overt anger towards her, and yet that doesn't match his experience? And how does she find resolution to that internal belief conflict?
I have one more piece to add
Let's
to
tie
that, if that's
back to
okay.
Go for
Yeah.
it, Dan.
On the one hand, I don't think enough head knowledge. So to answer that part, what can my wife do to understand this better or to kind of go
Yeah.
through her process? I don't think we can talk about sex addiction or problematic behaviors as maladaptive coping strategy. We could talk about the quote unquote reasons I did this. I don't think at the end of the day, it's a heart-based grief that knowledge isn't going to solve it, because in some ways it's never going to make sense. There's no justification for these behaviors. There's nothing that anyone could say that would be like, okay, I get why you would risk my health or our relationship or do these things that are so harmful to yourself and to us. So I think we have to own both of those things, that yeah, information and knowledge is helpful, and yet there's so much grief and pain that goes with this. And I think part of the healing is actually sitting with the grief and the pain and the loss. And that's how we can help. On the betrayer's side, how you can help your partner is really sitting there with her, with them in the grief and the pain, and trying to understand as much as you can and hearing their heart. I don't know what you guys say, but I think that I've never
No,
found
yeah.
the answer to why
Right.
you did this satisfy that part of the deep pain that the partner has.
I think you're
I'm going
right.
to
It's a
say
cognitive answer to an emotional question.
I'm
Yeah.
going to say both are important. I think to have the cognitive information, to have the education, to have the framework, to have the reframe actually of a maladaptive coping skill, and the groundwork was laid many years before you ever met. That is important. And that then I think facilitates the emotional connection, which is having that grief and being present for that grief and offering nurturance, affirmation, reassurances in that grieving process. I think the cognitive adds into the healing element of the emotional experience.
Yeah. I like to frame it as partners have this experience of being in their heads and being able to maybe understand some or trying to understand addiction and all the parts that go with that. But then the heart comes online and the heart goes, how could you do this to me?
Yeah.
How could you? And then they try to find an answer. And so I can understand why this partner would say, it must be because you never loved me. It must be because you hate me. She's trying to find answers to a question that's extremely complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope you all found this conversation helpful and interesting. I know we did. So there's that. I always assume that if we found it interesting, you must have as well. So you're welcome. Thank you for joining us. Please rate us on any platforms that you find us on. And if you have other questions you'd like us to address in a future mailbag, send those to us at conversations.sar@gmail.com.